During this tutorial, we're going to look at the Roghnu Data Portal and how to do a manual refresh. Now, the question you may be thinking is, when do I need to do a manual data refresh? Well, for some of you, you may not have to. Roghnu performs nightly refreshes of your data, so you may not need to have a manual refresh. But it's important to note that for some data points that we're only refreshing the current month plus the previous 2 months. Because of the data size, it would take a long time to do more, so just keep that in mind. So the reasons why you would need to do a manual data refresh is if you've made adjustments that go further back than those 2 months, or maybe you're doing month-end closing with your accounting team and you've made some adjustments. You don't want to wait till the refresh at the end of the night. You want to see that information reflected in your reports now, so you want to go ahead and do that refresh. So manual refreshes gives you, the on-demand user, the ability to initiate your own manual refreshes to make sure that you have all the current updated information into your system. Now, as a refresher, when you're logging into the data portal, you're going to put in your username and password. Usually your username is your email address. Don't forget to check the Remember Me checkbox. That helps streamline the sign-in procedure because it will remember the information, and then click the Sign In button. Now that we're logged into the data portal, we're going to come over here to the left-hand side on our menu, and we're going to choose Manual Intacct Refresh. Once we've clicked on that, we're going to come up here and we're going to then click on Sync Intacct Objects. And this brings you to the list of objects that we can refresh. Now, there's different ways that you can find the objects that you want to refresh. I could simply come over here and use my cursor and scroll down and find the ones that I want to work on or refresh and just click on those. Or if I know the name, I can come up here into our object name search box and start typing in the information. And as you can see, the list is dwindling down, and I can get it narrowed down to a specific object if I want to. Now let's take a look at the list of objects or accounts that are available for refresh and the difference that they have. Now, we talked earlier when Roghnu does its nightly refreshes that some of the data points are only refreshed for the current month and the previous 2 months. Those are indicated by the objects that have the drop-down window on them. So if they don't have a drop-down window, those accounts, when the nightly refresh happens, go and do a full refresh. So what I'm saying with that is, with these accounts without a drop-down, if I made changes to the information in those objects to the information from 6 months ago, if I waited and the refresh happened tonight, those changes would be picked up from 6 months ago. These that have a drop-down window, if I were to make changes to information 6 months ago to on those objects, the nightly refresh would not pick those up, because the ones with the drop-down only is picking up the changes from the current month and the previous 2. So if I'm going through in these 2 accounts, I did make changes to the information in those 6 months ago, I could either wait for the refresh to happen tonight and it would find those and pick that information up. But if I need that information now for a report, then the options I have are to check the objects that I need to refresh. I can come up here if I know that the changes to the information were made for this year. I can come up, choose January and the 1st. I know the range, the changes were made within this range, and I can click on refresh. It will refresh that information. I can pull my reports. Let's say that I had people making changes to these accounts and I'm not exactly sure of the date range of the time that they have made changes. Here I can check on full refresh. It is going to give us a warning that's saying, hey, if you're doing a full refresh, it may take a while because it's a lot of information. And then once I'm ready, I can click on refresh. Now let's take a look at how to do a refresh for these objects that have the drop-down windows. Now with these, remember, when we do the nightly refresh for these objects with the drop-down, it's only going to pick up changes that you've made to the current month and the previous 2. So if I went in and made changes to information in January, the nightly refresh would not pick those items up. So what I would want to do is select this object. I want to come to my drop down and choose the month that I made the changes in. So that would be January. So it's going to go back and make find the changes from January on. Now remember, if I went up here and hit refresh, which I could, it would go ahead and refresh everything in this object from January on. Now remember, these are larger data points, so it may take a while. So one thing that I can do, some of these have this add link here. So if I click on that, it gives me the ability, if I know specific accounts, I can go in and choose those if I know which accounts I made changes. That will just speed up the refresh. But if I'm not exactly sure of the accounts that I made the changes to, I can then just come up here and click on refresh. Once you click that refresh button, you're going to get a message that says your refresh process has been triggered and that you'll be notified when it is done. And there's two different ways to confirm that your refresh has been completed. One, you'll get an email from support@roghnu.com. The second is going to the process monitoring dashboard in the data portal to verify that it has been completed. Now the email will look like this. You'll get an email that says that it has been processed successfully, and it will also let you know how many records were in the refresh. The other way, in the data portal, going to the process monitoring dashboard, it will let you know when the refresh began and when it finished and how many actual records were contained in that. If you have more questions on the refreshing process, feel free to send us an email or give us a call.